Hello, everyone, and welcome to Snap Take. This is Glazer of Snap Judgments, the official podcast of Marvel Snap Zone. And today we're asking you the big question: is the new Spotlight card, Series 5 card Scorn, worth your hard-earned Marvel Snap resources, or is this going to be a card that you're better off skipping? Scorn comes in Spotlights this Tuesday with Series 4 card Jean Grey and Sebastian Shaw. Does that tip the scales so that you should open for Scorn? We're going to answer all that and so much more in today's video, but we're going to kick it off by doing a last review of Misery, the Series 5 card that is currently in Spotlights as of this week. Misery is a 4/7, Series 5, 6,000 tokens. On reveal, repeat the on reveal abilities of your other cards here, then destroy them. Misery is, bluntly, not great. She is a good card, a fun card, but most of the decks that run Misery run perfectly fine without her. Electro seems like a natural home for Misery, but if you try to Misery Electro and it doesn't work, you're sort of dead. Cersei and Blink do much of the same job as Misery in those Electro decks, to the point where you don't need her. I'm not sure if the best Misery decks run her. In addition, Misery is often being run in Darkhawk and Ronin decks, and she is a very powerful card in those decks. She can clog an opponent's hand to the point where they can't do a single thing, and that's a powerful thing to do. However, there are Agent Venom, Iron Man, Darkhawk decks that have similar power output that don't need Misery. So is Misery worth having? No, I don't think so at the end of the day. However, there are several caveats. First is that this card is ridiculously fun. Misery is one of the most fun cards in all of Marvel Snap. I think I had an absolute blast playing with it, even as I wasn't winning a lot. The other thing is that I think War Machine is a must-have card, and Namora is a very good card. If those are cards you want, then all of a sudden I think that might push you to open for Misery. If you need War Machine, absolutely open until you at least get War Machine. If you get Misery along the way, you're happy. If you need Namora, I still think it's a little bit closer, but I'm leaning toward yes, get Misery in that case. If you need just Misery, unless you're swimming in resources though, please skip unless a deck like this next one really speaks to you. We have this deck from Philip Rakovich, our friend and Snap Judgments family member. He has a Galactus deck that runs Misery. This deck does not need Galactus to win, but it is a very, very powerful Galactus deck. This is one of the best Galactus main decks around. I've been talking to Sizer almost every day lately, and Sizer keeps telling me how Daredevil is one of the best cards in Marvel Snap that no one plays, and this is an example of a deck that takes ridiculous advantage of Daredevil. Now, Misery is awesome in this list, right? But what's Misery really hitting here? Electro, right? It's not really likely to do much of anything else. You can do it into Wave if you're really feeling desperate, but generally speaking, Misery is just an Electro card. Well, if that's the case, then Cersei and Blink are perfectly fine. In fact, Blink might even be better in a lot of situations, because what Blink does is it allows you to sort of pop out your Galactus as a surprise and steal wins. So again, Misery is very strong here, but it's only got one really important target. All right, all of the shorts here on this channel are made by Philip Rakovich. It's actually his gameplay you see when you're watching those shorts. He's a phenomenal player, sits in the top 1,000 almost always, wins a ton of tournaments, genuinely great player, great person. For this list, you need Galactus, Alioth, and actually, I don't think you need Misery, which I talked myself through here. I think you're fine running Blink. Nico is absolutely phenomenal in any deck that runs Electro. She gives you extra chances to run it. However, Nico, Jeff, and Nebula can be White Widow, Iceman, Spider-Ham, and Nightcrawler. In fact, White Widow gives you an extra use for Misery. Red Hulk in this list is good, but can be Magneto as well. All right, so, one last thought, excuse me, about Red Hulk. I think it could also be Nimrod. I really want to try and giving a Galactus Nimrod deck some run. So I asked for 40 games from Ratco before I'd feature this, and this one went 31-11 with a 1.55 cube rate in the top 1,000. List stats are stick. No one expects this, and as long as you're an early watcher of this video, no one's going to expect this. You're going to steal cubes. So Nebula blind on turn 1 if spot 1 is Sage. I don't know what the hell Sage is supposed to say. Safe. If spot 1 is a safe place to Galactus, you would really like to Nebula in a different spot to encourage the opponent to play there. You play Nico if draw 2 or Demon, and just wait for Electro if you have Electro in hand. You will do nothing on turn 2 for that. Turn 2, you want Nico with the same possibilities as turn 1, if not Daredevil over Jeff. Turn 3, you'd like to play Electro, generally speaking, over Wave. After Electro, you can Misery and just get rid of that limitation, or you can drop a Hobgoblin in a lane where you might like to Galactus. Hobgoblin is often just a lane win. You can also, if you played Wave, drop Galactus just fine. And if you didn't Wave yet and you didn't play Electro, you can still turn 4 Wave into Galactus just fine. Turn 5 is Galactus or Lithe, depending on what's necessary. And remember, Daredevil will give you all the information you need for that. And then turn 6 is Red Hulk or Alioth. Nice and simple, right? This list is through the roof powerful, and I cannot urge you more to give it a chance. However, do you need misery to do so? I, once more, don't especially think so. One last look at this very cool, very powerful list from Racco, and then we're going to move on to... Hey, if you're willing to, please hit that sub button. We're trying to hit 15,000 subs by the end of the year, and it looks for all the world like somehow we're actually going to make it. So if you're willing to subscribe, it would mean the world to us. We bring you 7 days a week of Marvel Snap videos. I'm not even going to tell you. I'm not even going to promise you we're not going to do a second freaking video today. I would really like to get one in, but at worst, you're going to get 8 videos from us this week because there's a patch coming Tuesday, and that means extra freaking video. We did 9 videos last week. We give you more Marvel Snap videos, more Marvel Snap decks than anyone in the entire game. If you like fresh decks, trying things, and knowing the meta, this is the channel for you. A like and a comment will help us out as well in telling the YouTube algorithm to show us to more people, and it can help enter you to win a season pass. At some point in every video, I ask a question. As long as you're subscribed and you answer that question, and if you get picked at the end of the week, you win a season pass. We give away 10 season pass at the start of the season, and then 1 a week for the rest of the season. We will have 2 season pass winners later on this video. All right, Scorn, Spotlight card 1015, 1, 2, Series 5, 6,000 tokens. When you discard this, return to your hand and give it +2 power to itself and one of your cards in play. So every play, it's +4, which means 2 uses, it's a 1/9. Cool, because the 2 is going to happen sort of for free, and then you still have to play it eventually if you're going to get its own power. 2 discards of this make it an absolute top-notch card. Think about how much you have to do in order to make a Meek or a... Collector really powerful. Well, this card does almost all that work for you right away, which makes it a very, very, very strong card. This card comes with Jean Grey and Sebastian Shaw. The Jean and the Shaw spotlights are gorgeous. I might be blowing some spotlights for them. We're going to review Jean and Shaw later, but I know some people decide what to open, what to buy, based upon whether or not they some people decide what to open based on art. Let's just say it that way, based on how good the art is. And I don't love this Scorn variant. I think there's a better one coming when you buy the card, but I do think that this Jean and this Shaw are absolutely gorgeous and worth owning. All right, let's talk about what this card synergies are. So if you discard this twice, that's a 1/9, and a 1/9 is worth running, right? Like, you're never going to turn down a 1/9. That seems incredible, especially a 1/9 that you're not playing until late, which makes it likely safe from Killmonger. If you draw it late, it can suck. But even if it's 1/5 and you draw it late, that's a perfectly fine card. That's a Hydra Bob, right? You're not sad for a Hydra Bob. You're not sad for a Sable. Those are powerful cards, right? So being able for Scorn to do that is very, very strong. So this is an Apocalypse discard card almost always. It's very likely in the same design space as the old America Chavez. For anyone who's newer, America Chavez used to be a 6/9 that you would only ever draw on turn 6. And what it did was make you more likely to draw everything else before turn 6. So it was amazing in discard. In that, if you can MODOK on turn 5, the last 2 cards in your hand would be Apocalypse and the last 2 cards in your hand would be Apocalypse and this. That was amazing, right? The problem ended up being that, like with Swarm, you could never really MODOK on turn 6 with the situation, because then you end up with a million Swarms in hand if you couldn't discard them earlier. This sort of takes care of all of those problems at the same time, giving you this card that can sit at the end to be a last Dracula discard, which could make it a 1/8, and if you're getting a 9 power Dracula, guess what? That's the same thing as discarding American Chavez used to be. And then you could play Apocalypse, or you can play that 1/8 and discard Apocalypse one last time and get that stupidly huge Dracula. And your opponent has to sort of account for both of those, which is a huge power up for this deck. The key cards in this deck that I synergize with are Colleen Wing, Gambit, MODOK, and Corvus Glaive. I'm particularly a fan of this with Colleen. I haven't run Colleen in a long time. I'm excited to put that card back in decks. Dracula is the key card here. Dracula, being an Apocalypse discard, was no longer as pivotal because it was a little funkier without Chavez. If you wanted a MODOK on 5, you had to pray for a good top deck on 6, right? Because otherwise you would have nothing to really do. Otherwise you'd have to MODOK on 6, and I just told you about the Swarm problem there. This sort of eliminates that problem. You can now MODOK on turn 5 or turn 6 perfectly fine without any real problem. The big question, though, is that this type of discard doesn't run any tech. What its power is that it sort of hides how much power it can have until the end, and so it's capable of winning. This has to have enough stats for that to be worth it. I think that Scorn is a powerful card in making sure it has enough stats, but is that enough stats to beat the best decks in the game? That we're gonna have to wait and see. Collector and small discard packages can really love this. This is +1 on Collector every time it discards while giving +2 to something else. That seems like it's really good. There's possibly a small discard package that wants this. Unfortunately, the small discard packages we have right now are very odd card based. They're built around running Stature and running Proxima Midnight and running Swarm. Because you want to discard even cost cards with your like Moon Knight. Well, this is an odd cost card, so we'll see how that actually ends up working. So Dakin is the one discard card that really wants more power. So if you can figure out how to keep Dakin semi-alone on the board and trigger this on Dakin, Dakin's immediately going to become huge. I still think Dakin can use a buff even with this, but hey, we're going to look at a deck that does that. And Shaw will get +4 if it, so maybe discard Surfer, but I don't really think so. Let's take a look at some decks. We're going to start with Drewski's Scorny. We usually start with Docty, but Drewski had the version of the Scorn deck, the version of the classic discard deck I like best, and thus we're going to take a look at it. So the big question here, I think this deck is basically right, is I'm not sure if I want Swordmaster. I might want Swordmaster to be either Corvus Glaive or name of card has to come to my brain, or just run Swarm, or I can run, last card is Silver Samurai. One of those 3 cards I think might replace Swordmaster, but what you're seeing here is a relatively cheap deck because you don't need Dakin. You would need MODOK and Scorn really to run this. Proxima is very, 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 very helpful for this kind of list. What you see is a deck that puts up a lot of power without a lot of shenanigans. Morbius and Collector should be able to get relatively big and compete with lanes. Scorn should allow you to do your Apocalypse shenanigans. Now you don't have to worry about and you can MODOK on 5. That's what this deck really missed. It wants to have Scorn and Apocalypse in hand and MODOK on 5. And if it can do that, it can win. So a good play pattern here would look like, if you can Blade, if not, don't worry about it. Then you drop Morbius or Collector. Then you drop Dakin or Morbius or Collector. Then you can drop Dracula, and then you can drop MODOK. And the last 2 cards in hand will, if you're lucky, be Apocalypse and Scorn. You can at that point play your Apocalypse and just go to town. And then you have alternate play patterns where you do things like discard extra with Colleen, or where a 2/6 Colleen seems really good, etc., etc. Again, I think there's a semi-reasonable argument that Dakin ends up being a extra discard card here, but outside of that, I think this is basically it. This is where you want to be for classic discard, which is where we have to start. But if you want to have some fun, the King of Doom Marvel Snap Card content, Docty, has you covered. Let's do some Exodia stuff. Scorn, basically never leaving hand, like Apocalypse never leaving hand, means that if you can do the Wong, Mystique, Gambit, Odin thing, Gambit, Absorbman thing, you're going to clear a whole board. And Scorn just puts a bajillion power on your side as you're doing so. That seems cool to me. Let's go. That's all this list is. I really like it. I think it's super cool. This is an Exodia list where you're just trying to go Wong, Mystique, Gambit, Odin. And if you can pull that off, you're just set. If you can go get an early Sarah with Onslaught, you can even do all that on turn 7, just like go off. You can also end up going Wong on those cards, right? Like you can go Wong Onslaught, and that'll do the same job. You go Magic Wong Onslaught, you get the same basic gist as the previous play when you Gambit. Love it. Love an Exodia combo. Deck's not good, but it will be super fun. Then we have Res Snapper's Scorn Miracle. This is basically saying I'm not running an Apocalypse list. I'm seeing if I can make a huge Morbius and Collector. And you've got Mystique to do that. You can also do the mini Exodia combo with Mystique and Wong here just fine, but you can also Morbius Mystique and just discard like crazy, and Morbius getting 2+2 each time means that it should be big enough to be really big. This one does run Swarm because it really, really, really wants that Collector to grow too. You've got 3 different scalers, and then of course, if you can empty your hand at the end, Dracula can discard Scorn and work. Gambit, this one seems really cool. Props to Res Snapper, who's another brilliant player. Then we have the Heli Disco. I based this on an earlier BBAK deck. BBAK, back when he played, he unfortunately gave away his account to his brother, had this awesome deck where he was discarding entire hands worth of stuff, right? Yeah, where he's just discarding entire hands worth of stuff, growing collector, using the cards he gets from Helicarrier to win. I'm not sure if Scorn fits in this one as well as the previous one, but Swarm was really frustrating in the list because it often messed up your Helicarrier hand. I don't think Scorn does that, and then we can re-add Colleen as an extra way to get rid of Scorn. So I think that this version makes a little bit more sense, even if collector likes Swarm better technically. Then we have the great Perry Manilow. Check him out on Twitch, please. Our friend Perry Manilow. Everyone else was YouTube. Check out Docty Snap. Checked out Drewski, and check out Rez Snapper, all on YouTube. Perry Manilow's on Twitch. He's on YouTube too, but his Twitch is his main platform. Where if you want to see him play this ridiculously cool deck, it's awesome. What you want to do here is you want to dock in Zola Dockin. You want Ravona, so you can dock in Zola Dockin, right? And then you can Modoc off the two shards, and docking it super huge. Scorn's just an extra thing that gets discarded, and since your hand is so small, you're relatively likely to get all of that Scorn goodness. You can also with this end up Zola-ing Dracula. Dracula is playable on turn 3, by the way, with Ravona. You can end up Zola-ing Dracula and then just double discard an Apocalypse / Scorn at the end, which seems like it's also crazy strong. I really like this list. Supergiant is here because you can Supergiant Modoc, and then you can still Zola, and then Modoc will real within the game. Very cool list. I love this list. This is one of my favorite lists from the great Perry Manilow. You should absolutely check out. So these are our Scorn lists. I'm going to give you my review at the end of this video, but in order to win the season pass, can discard put up enough points with Scorn to be a meta threat? Apparently, I just don't know how to type today. A meta threat. Will discard be a meta threat? Is this going to be a real meta deck because of Scorn, or is it still going to be a tier 2 deck? My answer to come when we talk about my final review after we talk about the Spotlight caches. But first, our giveaway winners are Crow Washington and CLDRZ Films 713063. So if you are you want to see some pass, do the stuff it says on screen if you'd like to claim it. Hey, if you want to see gameplay from these decks, check out the stream team. It is Sunday, so Obi will be playing the Jean Grey and the Shaw decks you're about to see. Obviously, Scorn isn't out. Oh, and Obi will be playing the Misery deck as well. So check out Obihaved over on Twitch. FaThorNewman should have a video up with his review of decks of the week, and tomorrow make sure you check out Gregor2424 as well. All right, Jean is now a Series 4 card. I didn't even realize that. I don't play a lot of Jean Grey. I do a thing on my Patreon where I look at my stats, and my stats with the Jean deck I had are absolutely terrible. I don't like this card. I think it's a bad card that goes in a couple decent decks. We still have 3 decks. Jean is a 3/4 ongoing. Players must play their first card here each turn if possible, and I think this card sucks. It is a generally bad card that once in a blue moon has an occasionally playable deck. Don't go crazy for it. All right. This is the deck that I sucked with, but Dragono kept winning tournaments with it and climbed into the top 1,000. So what do I know? Dragono has no blink Thena. This is a Thena list that basically says, I can lock you down with Jean and Cosmo, and I can steal another lane with Claw, or I can Legion you off or whatever. And then Venom Web gives you all these extra plays with Angela and Elsa. It's a very cool list. Again, I don't like Jean, so I don't have the most success with it, but it is still a very good and interesting list. And if you get Jean, if you decide you're opening for this card because you like this card and want Jean, then this is a list to play. Buddy has a Guardian's move list. Again, he had insane success with this. How good are you at predicting where your opponents play? Well, Jean makes that very easy. So if you get that play pattern down, feel free to play this list. We covered this weeks ago. It is still a perfectly effective list. Nothing has really changed in it. It's a good deck to play. However, do you need Jean for it? How good are you at predicting where opponents play? It's fundamentally the question I have for you. Then we have Snap Variants Warmongering. This is my favorite of these lists. This is just a straight up ongoing. Jean is pretty solid an ongoing list. This list's main problem is it's really trying to be 2 decks at once. You've got a U.S. Agent, Man-Thing, Luke Cage deck going, and you've got a and that deck very often wants to win with a Claw or something like it, right? And then you've got a Spectrum list as well, which just wants to play all the ongoing stuff and put up enough power. And those 2 things sort of interact, but don't always super interact, because if you get a Jean Cosmo lane, you don't always have a space to Spectrum, and that can be a problem. But this is still a very good list. These are all good lists. I just think Jean's lists always fall short of expectations of what we want them to be. All right, Sebastian Shaw is our next Spotlight card. He is a 3/4, Series 5, 6,000 tokens. He was the Spotlight card last December, which somehow was 10 freaking months ago. When this card permanently gains power, gain +2 more power, wherever this is. So that means Okoye, Nikaya, Silver Surfer, Forge, stuff like that, not stuff like Blue Marvel. When this permanently gains power, it gets bigger, which means that it is in a couple strength buff decks that aren't very good, but it is an absolute requirement for most Surfer decks where it is one of the key cards. This card is absolutely amazing in Surfer and absolutely meh everywhere else. Cool. Let's take a look at some Shaw decks. If you've been waiting for this, if you love Surfer, if you have all the other Surfer cards, feel free to grab it. So first we have Howie's Scarlet Boost. If you grab Scarlet Spider and somehow don't have Shaw, I'm assuming most of the people who grab Scarlet Spider have Shaw, but if you are a season pass buyer and you started the game a little late and you got Gwenpool and then you have Scarlet Spider, this is a fun list. Is it great? Nah. Zabu really helps though. This deck really, really likes the updated Zabu because you really want a Gwenpool with Shaw and Scarlet Spider in hand. That's fundamentally how you win here. Yeah, cool list. Not amazing, right? But a cool list. The Surfer Scream, I just recently checked out Scream stats, and Scream stats are way better than I thought now that she's out of spotlights. So maybe that card's going to be the meta threat we all thought. We'll have to see. We still need a larger sample. It's not seeing a bajillion games. But here is a nice Surfer Scream list that basically says I can move your stuff around at least a little bit, and one trigger off Scream makes her a 2/7, and 2 makes her a 2/11. Which is just insane. So if you can get 2 moves off Scream, then you just played basically a Sebastian Shaw powered card. So that's cool. That gives the list an extra major threat. Then we have Safety's Buffs for Real. This is a another Scarlet Spider list. Again, if you have Scarlet Spider, I would assume you have Shaw. But this is if you happen to get Namora last week, another place to go. This deck does not need Aranya in any way, shape, or form. It's basically saying I've got 18 ways to do the thing, right? And the thing is basically get your stuff big enough, get your Shaw and Scarlet Spider big enough to win lanes. Ironheart really helps here, right? This is a cool list. Again, I don't think any of the non-Surfer lists are really where it's at. They're just options for you to have. So let's do 2 Surfer lists. The first is Surfer Classic. I threw this together on September 27th, apparently a month ago. Nothing has changed for it. I really like Cosmo and Juggernaut in my Surfer. They can be like 15 different cards. Cosmo, Juggernaut, and Red Guardian can be anything, but the rest of this is the Surfer build. Every Surfer build, that like all the top Surfer builds go Nova, Forge, Brood, Surfer, Killmonger, Hope, Shaw, Absorbman, Gwenpool. Although if you don't have Hope, some of them run Sarah instead. It's fine. I'm personally fond of Hope. I also am more fond of Makari in one of the swing spots than most people. But if you want to play Classic Surfer, you need Shaw. And Shaw is the only Series 5 card you really need. So if you want Surfer, this is where to go. And then there's the Toxic Surfer. This is from our friend Gregor2424. I know it says Den Hearthstone, but Den writes articles for Snap Zone where he makes decks from other players and for his tier lists and stuff. So this is the classic Toxic Surfer. Basically, what you want to do here is you have 2 options after your magic. You go Wong into Mystique into Hazmat, and then you can Odin that to absolutely dominate. If you have Luke out, you just win the game. Or you can go Mystique, Wong, Surfer, and you can win the game that way. Either way works perfectly fine, and you just put up so much power that when the combos go off, you basically can't lose. The combos are disruptible in a particularly disruptible right now in a Cosmo meta, so be forewarned that this is dangerous. But if you don't get hit with that combo, this is one of the better more power the decks that puts up more power in Marvel Snap. Very cool list, and for a little while it was meta. I think if you want to play this is why you get Shaw though, right? You need it for all these lists, but this is the list to get Shaw. If you don't want to play this list, you can skip Shaw. All right, so should you open this week? Scorn seems like she's probably a 1-deck card, and unless that deck is meta or you absolutely love discard, you don't need it. Yeah, so that's pretty simple, right? Shaw is a 1-card deck, so unless you love Surfer, this is a skip. Jean Grey goes in 1 to 3 decks, but they're never very good, and she's a Series 4 card, so if you want her, tokens are fine. Here's what we do, because we don't actually know how good Scorn is. Maybe Scorn is completely broken and discard is good. If she is, I'm going to tell you straight up, I fully expect discard to be nerfed, though, which I think is worth knowing. Last time they released a card that made discard meta, it was Meek, and then they nerfed it into Oblivion, and they nerfed Apocalypse into Oblivion. So I don't see why this would be different. I don't think they want this to be the best deck, but so if it is, I think it'll be nerfed. But either way, on Thursday, after this has been out for 2 days, I ask a bunch of top players. Almost all of them are in the top 100 or some of the best and most accomplished deck builders in Marvel Snap. What do you think about this card? They then say, I think it's this. I put that on a slide in Thursday's video, because remember, we do a video every day, and I tell you about it. Friday, I look at that and the that information from all the top players and the data and the best decks and my own experiences, and I sort of synthesize them into a recommendation. Then on either Sunday or Monday's video, this week it's Sunday, next week it might be Monday, we'll see how it goes, I do a last chance review of the card where I give you one last review of whether or not you should open for this card. If you're curious what that looks like, check the beginning of this video again, because I did one for Misery. So this week feels like a skip unless Discard or Surfer are your jam. If you love Discard and Surfer, just go get this stupid card, right? You'll be very happy to have it. However, generally speaking, for almost everyone, just wait until Friday. This is not a card you need right now. Friday, right before weekend missions, I will have a much better idea of whether you should get it. But for now, this is a big old skip for me. Although, again, if you love Discard and love Surfer, if those are like your absolute jams, don't wait for me. Don't worry about it. If you're going to play the shit out of this card because you need Shaw and you love this card, then go get them. But my expectations are not high overall. Cool. All right, questions of the day, Patreon, and we out of here. So first question is, Rid asks about cards I hate. So the card I hate most in Marvel Snap is Red Skull. I hate Nazis. If you're a Nazi, go away. But I also don't love being asked to roleplay a Nazi. I'm aware Zola is a Nazi and Baron Zemo is sometimes a Nazi, depending on which version of Zemo, and so on and so forth. But Red Skull is Marvel's stand-in for Hitler, and I don't really love that they made that a playable and powerful card. So, like, fuck Red Skull. Thank you very much. I also don't like Yondu. I think Yondu is basically a trap card almost always. Even in mill decks, you don't want a Yondu. Yondu too often just gives the opponent a better draw, and I don't want to give my opponent a better draw. I like the old Yondu significantly better than the new Yondu. I recognize what they were doing with Baron Zemo, but Baron Zemo doesn't matter, and so Yondu is terrible. Last card I don't like is Gambit, and that's mostly because Gambit doesn't like me. We can put Wiccan in this conversation too. When I need Gambit to hit a specific card, it never does. When Gambit's played against me, it always blows up the most important card I have. When I play Wiccan, I go like 12 games without ever seeing the setup for Wiccan. When I'm playing against Wiccan, like in Wiccan decks are easy to recognize, they hit Wiccan almost every time. So those cards I hate just because they're really mean to me. Mentor Burnout asks for a lesser known comics run that I love. So we've got Agents of Atlas is an old comics run I love. It came out in the mid 2010s. As my father texted me, sorry, I looked down for a second. It's a phenomenal comics run. It's a team of agents. Jimmy Woo, who's in the MCU, is the leader of them. A team of like superheroes. I believe Namora is in it for a while, or Namorita maybe instead of Namora. But it is a super fun adventure comic that I had an absolute blast reading. Now that I think of it, around the same time, there was a book called Age of Sentry. Not Sentry. The original Sentry one was fine, but Age of Sentry is a Silver Age Superman comic starring Sentry, and it's a fucking blast. Havoc and Wolverine Meltdown remains one of my favorite comics. If you've seen the original Havoc variant, the one that came in the shop, not the Spotlight, where he's wearing the classic head suit, that is a Havoc and Wolverine Meltdown one, and it's super cool. I love the art. That book is phenomenal. It's Havoc and Wolverine sort of having a road trip where they get into all sorts of trouble and shenanigans. My favorite kind of Wolverine story. Doom 2099, the original run, was Warren Ellis, and it was fantastic. It was a fairly political comic, which I always really enjoy. And like I really like the central mystery of, is this Victor Von Doom or not? Strike Force Morituri is a book. I wish I remembered who wrote it. I probably should look that up, but I didn't. So, but Strike Force Morituri is this comic by well, whoever it's by, but it's an 80s comic where it's set in an alternate future where basically aliens are invading Earth and Earth is on the ropes, so they build a strike force of superhumans, but when they give people superpowers they die within a year, so it puts this weird like suicide clock on it in the future, fighting aliens in a hopeless situation. It's the coolest fucking comic, and I wish they'd bring it back or do something. X-Statix is absolutely amazing. X-Statix, the original run, was actually X-Force and then became X-Statix, is a reality show of mutants, and it's just phenomenally written and an absolute joy to read. It's aged beautifully. Check it out. having aged a bit less well is Next Wave, but it's still very, very funny. It's a Warren Ellis comic, so he's problematic, but still, the comic is one of my favorites. It is a straight up comedy comic. Like, it's an adventure comic, right? But it's a romp, and it is genuinely joyous and fun, and I had an absolute blast reading it. And finally, Ultimates, and I don't mean the Ultimate Universe Ultimates. The Ultimates came back to the MCU, or there was an Ultimates MCU run that Al Ewing wrote that I absolutely loved. I believe, unless I'm mistaken, that's the one that had Sunspot. It had Blue Marvel. It's a super great comic that I absolutely adore, and I wish more people had read, because Sunspot, the Avengers hero, was so much more interesting than Sunspot, the X-Force comedy character, to me. And that's where we are. We all good? We all good. Time to say thank you to our patrons. Thank you to Abigail Giesland, Mandatory Burnout, It Regardless, David G. Wingfield, Direwolf, LAB, FaThorNewman, Good Dog Gamer, Inc., I Am Frostman, Jane Everett, Corwin, Primed Ryan, Ryan Burke, Caretix Lee, Koire, Black Dahlia, Pyrophros, The Goat Seeker, Den Man Falcon, Archangel 3K, Hollowed, Quid Pro Joe, the king of new Marvel Snap card content, as seen earlier in this video, Doc-D, Ratnik, Mr. Kerfuffle, Ginger Prime, Philip Rakovich, hey, we saw his deck too, Haplo, Kenny Loggins of the Danger Zone, Rob Silverman, one of our OGs, The Notorious Bizza, Exorcist V and Skippy G, the winner of Snap Judgments League Season 1, Tommy Nyquist, the King of Bros, the Great Kazoo, Jessica Gamble, hey Jess, Woody, what's up Woody, Kev C. Hoda, Lunacris, Time for Q-Town, Quantum Quinn, John Q and Jimmy McHugh, Clam, 8th Sage, Mod Supreme Models, the one and only Darth Tater, No Joe K, Joe P, Steven, Brian Kaufman, Tristan H. Martin, G. Sun B, thank you so much for taking care of the deck archive, Jason, J. D. McDonaldinho, check him out on Twitch, The Fuzzy Dunlop, Spectrumix, Woot, Matt H., DJ Mackie Hijinks, No Frickin' Flex, Ocularis, Mr. Craig Sterry, B.G. Jonesy, check out the Triple Threat, Two Ties, The Great Laura Devs, the Pirate King Tuccrr, the Home Minute, of course, Gunny T, where the T stands for congrats to Gunny T and Models. They ran that big Marvel Snap second dinner tournament after running Snap Judgments League for so long, and huge props to them for moving on up. Tournament ran beautifully. You guys killed it. Hopefully, you found it as fulfilling as everyone found it participating and watching. Much love to everybody. Check out some more of our content right on the side of the page. Sub right below me, and we'll see you tomorrow or maybe later, and we'll see for some more Snap Take. Peace.